In today's video, I'm going to be talking about what ISO or ISO is and how it affects your photographs. Now, ISO was originally created to define film sensitivity to light, but I'm not going to go in the technical aspects and definitions of ISO, rather how you can use it to help improve your photographs. ISO is a camera setting that is used to brighten or darken an exposure. ISO is measured by numerical values, usually from about 100 to 12,800. Now the lowest ISO the camera can do is called a base ISO, and this in most digital cameras is around 100. And then as you raise the ISO up from 100, it will brighten the exposure. Now raising a camera's ISO does come with some downsides. As you can notice, I'm shooting at ISO 3200 right now while I'm filming, and you can see it's a little bit grainy. As you raise your ISO, it'll introduce noise, which is those grain speckles within an image, causing you to lose image quality. So now I lowered my ISO to ISO 100, and you can see the image on the video is much cleaner. It doesn't have all those speckles and all that noise. Now ISO does work pretty much the same with film and taking still images within digital cameras. So now I have my camera all set up here. We have this nice mountainous landscape in front of me. So I'm just going to kind of work my camera around, try and find a composition, and then take some pictures at different ISO values. So I did manage to find a composition here. I kind of have these nice fall autumn colors in the right on these trees here, and it kind of frames my composition because there's also some nice golds in the foreground, and then you have this river and then these mountains in the background. Now this viewpoint is the viewpoint of Denali Peak, but unfortunately it's not out today. It's very cloudy. And then as I was driving here, I noticed some other mountains to my left that were pretty dramatic that I wanted to photograph. They had the clouds kind of weaving through them, but now those are completely covered in clouds. So right now I'm at ISO 100, and since I'm shooting in manual mode, none of the other settings will change to autocorrect the exposure as I change the ISO. So I'm going to turn it up to ISO 400, and you can see the image got considerably brighter. And again, it's now overexposed because I didn't adjust any of the other settings to compensate for it. Now if I go all the way up to ISO 800, then you can see it's very overexposed and it's completely washing away any detail in the sky. And normally you don't want to shoot anything higher than ISO 800 because then it could add a substantial amount of noise to make the images unusable. So now I'm going to take some pictures and show you the differences of the images shot at different ISOs. And this definitely is not the best light to be shooting in today, that's for sure. But it is kind of an interesting scene, so I like it. So first I'm going to shoot at ISO 100. And my other settings, I am on manual mode, so I have to adjust all the other settings. And then I'll be shooting for the first one, 1/40th of a second, f11, ISO 100. And you can see in this image, as I zoom in, there's barely any noise within the image. Just because it's shot at such a low ISO, and I am using a full frame camera that can handle noise very well, you can barely see any noise as you zoom into the shadows. Now for the next image here, I'm going to raise the ISO to ISO 800. Now that's quite a big step, but in order to be able to see some of the noise, I decided to raise it a bit. So now I'm at ISO 800, still at f11, and then 1/250th of a second. As I raise the ISO, I have to adjust the shutter speed to make it faster to compensate to give me a proper exposure. Now as you can see in this image, when you zoom in, you can see it's not quite as clean as the other one. It's still pretty clean and there's not too much noise, but you can see that a little bit of the noise and the noise speckles are visible within the image. So now I'm going to take a final image here, and I'm going to turn the ISO all the way up to ISO 12,800. Now this is a really high ISO, which you really wouldn't ever want to use unless you're in extreme low light situations and that you can only get the shot using that and have to sacrifice image quality to use this high of an ISO. But I just shot my image at ISO 12,800, 1/4000th of a second, still at f11. And now when we zoom into this image, you can see a substantial amount of noise in there. It's all really grainy and really blurry, which takes away a lot of the detail and the clarity within the image. So what is the best ISO to use? Well, it really depends on your shooting situation. Now for shooting landscapes, you'll want to try and use it as low as possible because you'll want nice, crisp, clean detail images. But sometimes that won't be possible because even a day like today where it's super windy, if I'd use my base ISO along with some filters, I'd have to shoot at a slow shutter speed, which the wind is blowing the leaves, so it'll cause motion blur, causing the leaves to be blurry. You would also want to use high ISOs if you're shooting sports or wildlife, because for the same thing, you don't want to use too slow of a shutter speed to have your subjects blur. You want to make sure they're nice and pin sharp, and you'd rather have them sharp with a little bit of noise than blurry and lose an image. And you should never be afraid to use a high ISO, because sometimes in order to get to the shot, you have to. And again, it's better to get an image with a little bit more noise than you would want than no image at all. So now you should know a little bit more about ISO and how it affects your photographs. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.